Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice, for being there to call out to your mom. How heartbreaking was that? Call out for your mom. I can't breathe. But because of you, and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice, your name will always be synonymous with justice.
Well, isn't that the clown world that we're living in now today? Welcome, everybody. I'm Peter Duke, and I'm joined by Tracy Connors today, and we are the Reality Operating System. And today we're going to be talking about lights, camera, fiction. What does that mean, Tracy?
That means what we just saw, Peter. Where people, it would be nice if those were split up over our heads.
Yeah.
Except we don't live in clown world, but they're trying to force us to live in clown world. And that's what lights, camera, fiction is all about, creating this false reality. And if enough people are watching that false reality, it starts becoming real to them.
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin because you had an entire list today that I put in the show notes of things that you wanted to go over. And maybe you can start to go over that while I change my camera back to manual focus because it's doing that focus breathing thing.
Yeah, pulsing.
That drives you nuts. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that.
All right, so in the lights, camera, fiction category, there were two stories that popped off in the past week and a half as confirmed hoaxes that were pushed by mainstream media, mostly to Trump's detriment. And the first one was the idea that the Russians had reached out to the Afghanis and floated the idea of bounties for American soldiers to be killed. Now, go ahead.
Wasn't that major news in like New York Times and Wall Street?
New York Times broke the story.
Yeah.
And I think I've traced it back to June of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all over the place. Everybody weighed in on it. This is horrible. And I think that was on the heels of the lie where Trump supposedly called the World War I soldiers losers.
That's right. He was at a battleground, woods, Belleau Woods in France. And it's interesting because when when he was there, I noticed that there was also a German cemetery that was right next to the American cemetery. And I never saw anybody fact check it, but I always questioned whether or not he was pointing at the German cemetery when he said, "Oh no, the losers. That's where the losers are."
Well, if he ever even said it.
Yeah, or if he ever even said it, right?
Right. I didn't believe that he would say such a thing. I mean, it's not outside of the realm of possibility. But then this bounty story came out and the left wrote it. I mean, there's tweets of Liz Cheney saying, well, if this is true, we need to do X, Y, Z. Schumer calling for hearings. We need everybody in here all over again. This is such a major tragedy. Like, how dare this be going on? As if that's not typical warfare stuff to begin with, number one. Like, our hands are clean of all such things. I'm certain of it.
We never do that.
No. No, we have our Gladio armies. We wouldn't need to go to the Afghanis. We would just call up our guys that we have planted there to begin with.
That's right. You always have layers of plausible deniability, right?
Right.
I think that spheres of plausible deniability is probably the best way to envision it.
Well, it's like the way that you explained when you contracted for the NSA, that how many companies were in between you and them?
5.
There you go.
Yeah, there were 5 layers between me and the NSA, and everybody on each one of those layers was getting paid more than me.
This is how government budgets explode like crazy.
Well, that was my first real kind of like aha moment about how big the government is. Like I thought, well, the government, it's these federal employees and stuff. No. There's these concentric layers of consulting firms around the government that make it bigger,
that shield them from FOIA.
That shield them from all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
So there was that story that blew up this week, and I when I was researching for it, I think Mediaite had an article where they're still defending it, and they're saying because the language was really funny. The initial report was they had a low opinion of the intelligence's accuracy.
So Mediaite is reporting that the New York Times is still defending it?
No, Mediaite is still defending it. Let me find the story again, because I was just like, you got to be kidding me. This is such a friggin' joke. But while I'm looking that up, what was the other story that I had that blew up, Peter, that was fake?
Here's what I've got. I've got Russian bounty story, the
Yeah.
Capitol police officer not being murdered by the Trump mob.
Yes.
Oops.
So that was the big one. Right? We
Yeah.
were told what the alleged body count that the media has for the
It was
events
it
on
was
the 6th?
it was 5 or 6 originally, but
Right.
it keeps getting lower, I think.
And they were hanging their hats on this Capitol police officer who initially it was reported was beaten with a fire extinguisher
Correct.
and died as a result of those injuries.
Yep.
And then the story slowly changed over time, and now I guess we have the medical examiner's report saying he had a stroke.
Yeah,
Unrelated to this.
he died of natural causes, yes.
The following day,
Yep.
right?
Yep. So you got that. And then O'Keefe is suing CNN and the New York Times and Twitter.
He's suing everybody.
He's suing everybody.
Yes. It's a beautiful thing. So he was already suing the New York Times, and they've made it past the discovery phase, which was a huge hurdle to overcome. So now they should be able to depose people at the New York Times and get discovery. So we might get to see how the sausage is made if they don't just throw a bunch of money at him to go away. And I don't know what his number is.
Because everyone has a number, right?
Right. And he's talked about the reason I know so much about this is because he was on Timcast in real life maybe a month and a half ago, I want to say, O'Keefe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they hadn't made it through this part of the lawsuit. It was pending a judge's ruling whether or not they were going to allow the New York Times' motion to dismiss, which would have killed it. And they started talking about how, it takes a ton of money to go up against one of these organizations because the New York Times has a huge legal staff, I'm sure. So they've got lawyers on retainer. They might as well just have them do stuff, like deal with these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so James just dug his heels in and was like, these guys need to pay for this stuff. Like, they're destroying people's lives and reputations and getting away with it. So I'm planting a stake in the ground here. And he was talking about taking a payout from them. That's almost an admission. That's how it's, I mean, there are nuisance lawsuits that people just pay out to get people to shut up and go away.
Right. Well, there was the who were the kids at the Washington at Lincoln Memorial, the Covington kids.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Salmon did wound up taking a check, to drop the thing. So.
Right. And at a certain time, the number's big enough. So what James was saying is that if he gets a big enough payout, that he would start using that to bankroll a fund to help regular people that are getting harassed. They get shamed by these outlets.
So here's my issue with settling. My father was a physician, and one of the things that he was really annoyed about was the fact that part of the reason that medicine kind of spun out into the ridiculous situation that we've got today with how expensive it is and how expensive insurance is. It's because insurance companies would always settle. They always went to the actuarial chart, and then they figured out a number, and then they would settle. And my father, being the physician, thought, well, the problem with that is that they will settle whether or not you did anything wrong, because the actuarials have figured out that it costs them less money over the aggregate to pay out than to litigate. But my father's real problem with it is that it didn't eliminate any bad doctors. That is,
Right.
if there were bad doctors that were actually doing terrible medicine, maybe they needed to be removed. And because of the way that the insurance companies were settling all of the cases, then you never actually got any kind of justice. You just got a payout. And I guess if people define justice as getting a check, then that's some form of justice. It isn't the way that I would normally think of it, but so I guess that's my concern, is like helping the other guys. Don't you really? I mean, I was listening to James Corbett this week, and there was this guy that that he was interviewing this guy here, Mark Crispin Miller, who teaches propaganda at NYU. And he likes to use current events when he teaches his propaganda course because he contends that propaganda is not something that took part in some distant, unattached past like Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union. It's something that happens every day. And that he used the current COVID mask controversy in order to demonstrate the language techniques used by propagandists in order to manipulate human behavior. And he was rewarded for his example by having some kind of a COVID justice warrior in his class start, mean tweeting him. And then she wound up browbeating the administration and the department to write a letter that was signed by 25 people asking him to withdraw his spurious allegations, most of which were hearsay and unfounded, which he found particularly ironic because he teaches the class on propaganda at NYU, and all of these colleagues of his were lining up but behind the propagandists in order to challenge him and call him out. And when they wouldn't back down, he's now suing them. So,
can I ask you a question, Peter?
Sure.
Was he teaching this class remotely at the time?
Yes, yes. This is what's really. Okay. So jumping back to our theme today of the clown world. Yes, he was teaching the class on Zoom. So no one actually had a mask on in the class, and they weren't actually in the class.
Right.
But I highly recommend the James Corbett interview with him. And what was interesting, too, is that he was crediting James Corbett with a lot of his breakthroughs on understanding how modern propaganda works. And this is the guy who has been teaching the propaganda class at NYU for 20 years.
Wow. And people that don't know who James Corbett is, he's one of the old school internet researchers that I saw him. He's been recently removed from YouTube.
Yep.
I believe he still has all of his years. I think he's been doing it for 10 or so years of research.
Yep.
Everything is up on the CorbettReport.com. And I saw him recently. He was on Thaddeus Russell's podcast, and Russell didn't get to publish it until after Corbett had been thrown off the internet. And he still went ahead and put it up on YouTube, made a point to be like, now that I've dug into this guy's research, there's absolutely no reason to have him thrown off. And James said that his mission was to share publicly sourced information to prove all of his points.
James is impeccable in the way that he crafts all of his messaging. He is always referring to or citing a document, and a lot of them are government documents or published books or
NGO documents or
I mean he is Mr. Cite Your Sources, and he never, and I don't use the word never often, but he does not deal in hyperbole or kind of wanna sort of stuff. He sticks to concrete facts on everything that he does.
Yeah, and he's done a lot of really good research over the years that I've only scratched the surface of.
Yep. So, I mean, I think that he did an entire 2-year series on called Propaganda Watch, where he just kind of covered the day-to-day propaganda, what's going on.
Interesting. So I think all his stuff is backed up. All his videos are still available. You just have to go kind of dig for them.
Yeah, I think that if you go to the CorbettReport.com, you can link to all of it. He's been pretty copious about archiving everything that he does, and he's got it on different platforms. He started earlier, so I don't think he's on Rockfin, but
he might go there now.
He may be on Brand New Tube, or I can't.
Probably on a library.
Yeah, maybe a library.
Odyssey. So it's just Corbett Report. I pulled it up. I'll share it so everybody can see what the site looks like real quick. Okay. All right, so this is the Corbett report.
Right. So those videos are there, and
Yeah, that's Odyssey.
right.
Doesn't start at all. And that's the guy you were just talking about.
Yep.
Perfect. And while I have it up, this was Mediaite, Peter. So this is from the 16th of this week. This is how they're describing that. So it's false news. Fox News is outnumbered, repeats false claims that Russia bounty story was debunked. So how do they get around this? So they're saying, it turns out the Russian bounty story was based on intelligence report with a low to moderate level of confidence, which likely means it was sourced by only one individual, likely a detainee, and not confirmed broadly.
So once upon a time, when I was in junior high school, I was the editor of my junior high school paper. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Barbara Cooper, my teacher, taught us was that you need to have two sources. And I look at stories like that, and it's, let's just go back to my base assumption, which is that there's three kinds of journalists. There are true believers, there are nationalist intelligence assets, and there are globalist intelligence assets. The nationalists are aligned with some country. They're aligned with the United States or Israel or Great Britain or somebody. And the globalists are aligned with, the Atlantic Council, the Bilderbergers, the
Council on Foreign Relations, the
Council on
UN.
Foreign Relations, World Economic Forum, that cabal. And so when you look at an excuse like that, where it says, well, the one source that we were depending on,
likely a detainee who they would all scream, we don't get any actionable, reliable intelligence out of torture, which is what they're alluding to by saying likely a detainee.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's some merit to that argument, perhaps, but I'm just playing their game. All of a sudden, we should trust what we're assuming is something that was obtained from a detainee.
Right, and that's why it would be great if websites like NewsGuard or Ground News. I know Ground News' business model is slightly different, but if they would go through a report like that and say, well, how many sources are they citing?
Right.
Is the source a known source? Right, because that would be a pretty simple heuristic for like creating a little gauge or a color icon, green, orange, red, to determine whether or not you should pay attention to this article or whether or not it's got any kind of veracity.
Right.
Because I don't know, I mean, there was a whole bunch of nonsense thrown at Matt Gaetz a week or so ago. None of it seemed to be cited. None of it seemed to be sourced. It seemed to be just kind of a Joe McCarthy style. We're gonna smear this guy in the media, and see how many different ways we can attack him from so many different directions without having any kind of basis in fact for any of the things that we're doing. And it reminds me of a process that the FBI uses called tickling the wire, which is where if you think somebody's doing something, that you figure out a way to get a judge to allow you to wiretap them. And then you start throwing a bunch of nonsense out in the media to see who they call, right? To see who they're dialing up. And what kind of communications they've got. Who are they sending emails and text messages to? And so that kind of reminded me very much of a tickling the wire scenario.
And to your point, that's really gone nowhere.
It's gone nowhere, right?
But it was reported breathlessly. That's the fiction stuff that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Or we'll just run with something because we know that's an attention grabber. People will pay. Oh, there's a potential sex scandal with Matt Gaetz, who's now probably the most hated member of the Republican Party that holds office now that Trump's out of the way.
Right.
And for some reason, they leave DeSantis pretty much alone, which is kind of surprising to me. That I would imagine that will change.
Well, it's Zelensky, right? You isolate people. You got to pick one. You got to pick one target at a time and go after them, because that way you concentrate the media. You only have so many favors you can ask, right? And also it becomes like a snowball effect. If the New York Times is saying it, then it's okay for the Washington Post to say it. And if the Washington Post is saying it, then it's okay for the Guardian to say it. And if the Guardian is saying it, then it's okay for somebody else to say it. And it, becomes the snowball. And if there's only one target, then you basically get universal coverage and a universal smear, hitting at the same time.
And that just ensures that everybody is inundated with it.
Right. And then many people just hear that and then they just assume it's true because they don't check and they look at headlines and they don't read stories. Or they look at pictures and they don't read the headlines.
Or the headlines are fake and you have to read the story to know that the headline has nothing to do with the body of the article.
Right. So anyway, high school web newspapers? No.
Yeah, they were talking about that they still have journalism clubs.
I don't know. It was a newspaper. We printed it.
Right, but do they now have? I would imagine that it would make more sense for a high school to have a blog.
Yeah, it would. Yep.
Because then you're teaching kids how to use WordPress.
And then you could create all kinds of problems for the administration and comments.
Right. It's probably, hey, can you guys are just in charge of administrating our Facebook page.
Oh, the administration?
No, the school. Like the school newspaper is now a Facebook like page.
Yeah, I guess that would make the most sense.
Yeah. But I don't know. We got to find some high school kids and ask them.
But you can set up WordPress so that it automatically publishes to the Facebook page, and then you would be teaching people kind of multi-channel strategy.
Slow down here. We're talking about public school.
Yeah, which
You might be still printing newspapers now that I think about it.
Right. Miller was contending that the Academy, as he was referring to it. I was thinking, have you ever read Curtis Yarvin? I mean, if you're into James Corbett, maybe Curtis Yarvin will blow your mind. But he was talking about how the Academy, in the 20 years that he's been working at NYU, has been reduced to an indoctrination center. That it's not about critical thinking. It's not about questioning anything. It's about accepting whatever your professor is telling you and going along to getting along,
Yeah.
which is the crime of the century, I suppose.
No, and all of this makes me think of this book, The Amusing Ourselves to Death.
Yep. Neil Postman.
Yes. And the chapter that I liked, that I think is apropos to this and explaining like the news kind of stuff, is called Now This. So he says, now this is commonly used on radio and television newscasts to indicate that what one has just heard or seen has no relevance to what one is about to hear or see, or possibly do anything anyone is ever likely to see or hear. The phrase is a means of acknowledging the fact that the world as mapped out by the speeded up electronic media has no order or meaning and is not to be taken seriously. You want a flash clown world? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
There is no murder so brutal, no earthquake so devastating, no political blunder so costly, for that matter, no ball score so tantalizing or weather report so threatening that it cannot be erased from our minds by a newscaster saying, now this. The newscaster means that you have thought long enough on the previous matter, approximately 45 seconds, that you must not be morbidly preoccupied with it, let us say for 90 seconds, and that you must now give your attention to another fragment of news or a commercial. Like,
well, not only that, but you can add on top of that the fact that it's a pattern interrupt, right?
Yes.
You're shaking the Etch-a-Sketch on whatever the person was just looking at. You're just saying, oh, okay, forget what we just said. Now we have something. Now we have something else to talk about. John Dutoit, one of the directors of Hoaxed, the Mike Cernovich movie, posted a screenshot from 4chan that was about 4 years old, where the poster went down the hypnotic structure of
John
Oliver's show. Was it John Oliver or the other guy? The South Africa. Was it John Oliver? And it was funny because somebody had commented, and basically he showed how John Oliver broke down his psychological warfare technique to 20-second bites, and that he would repeat it over and over again in a short period of time. And somebody had commented underneath there, they were wondering why somebody hadn't just taken all of the bites and cut them up and then put them into a window the same way that video that we used to roll at the beginning of the show did, so that you could actually see the verbal organization of the psyop. Somebody should do that. Maybe one day if I have time, I'll do it.
I wonder if anybody's already done it. Because like you said, I've seen that. I remember that post from a couple years ago where it's like, this is the exact formulation that he uses or his writers use or whomever it is that's scripting that thing by saying, oh, here's the story. And then he throws in some non sequitur that's totally irrelevant, makes fun of that. But your brain has now connected those two unconnected things. Just like this pattern that Neil Postman describes, where it's now this. So you are going to think about whatever you just heard in relation to what you're hearing next, even though they have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we live in a very interesting moment in time. I had a journalist who I've known for a long time call me this week and tell me that they thought that, unironically, that Joe Biden is the law and order president, and that Donald Trump is an agent, a stooge for the Russians and the Israelis. And there were long pauses in that conversation because I was trying to figure out whether or not he was trying to get my goat, or whether or not somebody had a gun up against his head, or what was going on there. But I just felt like this entire kind of clown world scenario.
Clown world's eaten him.
Yeah, clown world has eaten him.
Got his brain.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what else? We talked about O'Keefe. We talked about. We didn't talk about Sitnik.
Yeah, the police
Yeah.
officer.
Yeah, I
that
mean,
was supposedly beaten to death by the angry Trump mob.
yeah, I guess that just didn't happen. There's all kinds of stuff that isn't happening.
Right. It didn't happen, but it was part of the impeachment trial.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing about all of these things, is that we kind of look at them in isolation to what all of the other things that were going on at the time. Konstantin Kilimnik, last week we were talking about the fact that he's in the Magnitsky. Did we talk about that, or was I on? No, I was on Addie's show. I was talking to Addie about it.
Okay.
Okay, so last week, Biden added a bunch of names and companies to the Magnitsky list, and the Magnitsky list was a law that was, I think it was sponsored by John McCain and Barack Obama when he was a senator.
I'll go look at that book. Let's see. But you can keep talking.
And basically what it does is it allows the United States government, without any trial or due process, to assign a foreign national to a status where they're basically it's like what we did to Iran after the Iran hostage thing, where we seized all their assets and we took all of their money, and we basically take them out of the global financial system.
Yeah, it's putting sanctions on individuals.
Yeah, putting sanctions on individuals and companies. One of the guys was a guy named Konstantin Kilimnik. And Konstantin Kilimnik was somebody that George Webb had linked to the entire Ukraine creation of the Russiagate myth. So there was a lot of Ukrainian, and the way that was reported in the media is that anybody who was from the old Soviet Union was a Russian. So there was a lot of times no discrimination between people who are Russians and people who are Ukrainians. It was all a lot of, it was a confusopoly, as Scott Adams would refer to it. But Konstantin Kilimnik was a name that came up all the time in George's reporting. And that name was on that list, and I didn't see anybody talking about it, or what the inference was, or why it was there, or why he was there. The one thing that I did notice, though, that I thought was interesting was that Dmitry Alperovitch, who was another guy who was kind of a featured player in a lot of George Webb's reporting.
He's the CEO of CrowdStrike.
He's the CEO of CrowdStrike, and he's a fellow at the Atlantic Council. And he used to be at McAfee with George Webb. He seemed to be a bit outraged by some of the people that were on the list. So it would be in line with George's reporting that if Kilimnik and Alperovitch were working together in order to try to out Trump, that Alperovitch would be mad that Kilimnik was being targeted that way. Although there were other things on the list that might have been triggering Alperovitch. It's not necessarily Kilimnik. It could have been. I think there might have been a software company or two that were on the list, and who knows? Maybe Dmitry Alperovitch is associated with those. I don't know. But he was loudly protesting on Twitter that he didn't think that for some reason that it was correct.
Oh, well, the whole thing's bogus. So I found the sponsors of this, and this is from a book that's really good. I would recommend it to everybody, called Grand Deception, The Browder Hoax. And he says, September of 2010, United States Senators Ben Cardin, John McCain, Roger Wicker, and Joe Lieberman introduced the Magnitsky Act in the Senate.
Okay, so it wasn't Barack Obama.
No, but no, he was the president.
Oh, no,
Obama? No, he wasn't. That's right. No, 2010. He came in and, yeah. Wasn't he 2008?
2008. Okay,
Yeah,
so Obama
he's
signed
the
it.
president that signed it, yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's where you get him. But yeah, the whole Browder side of the story is fascinating.
Look.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew, this is what Tracy was saying. I deleted the app off my phone because it wasn't working on my phone. So here's some oddness. Okay, Andrew and I were going through this thing today because Andrew's book got canceled off of Amazon. So he's giving it away for free.
And what's the book?
The book is "Don't Tase Me, Bro: My Life as a Meme."
Okay.
Because Andrew is the guy who got tased. He was a John Kerry supporter. He voted for John Kerry. Then he started putting two and two together, and he asked John Kerry a question about the Skull and Bones Society in a I think it was a college setting, and he was rewarded by being tased, and then he became a meme. And I think that might have been like the beginning of Jesse Waters' career too, right? Because I think that was when it was called Waters World, and it was a segment on Bill O'Reilly. And so anyway, as I remember it, when I used to actually watch Fox News, so he made the book available, and then he did an interview on InfoWars, I think, about how he made the book available, and for free. He's giving it away. Don't tase me, bro. Maybe we'll have to put a link in the show notes so people can go find it, because you can't tweet it. You can't tweet a link to the video on InfoWars where Andrew is talking about how he's giving the book away for free. And so I tried to tweet it, and it wouldn't let me tweet it. And then I went to Bitly, and I made a Bitly link, thinking, "Oh, I'll be trickier than the Twitter code." Nope, can't
Wow.
do that. Although I think that we just figured out that if you use band.tv instead of band.video, then the link works. So we
could also put it up on our site.
Yeah, we'll put it up on our site. Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
But anyway, don't tase me, bro. That's Andrew's book. And,
right, but Periscope stopped working for Peter, but it still works for me. So.
And Tracy, if Tracy goes to studio.twitter.com, she actually gets the producer interfaces, but I don't.
Peter's been bad on Twitter. We know this.
I don't know what's going on. They don't tell you. Although I have a clue, because at one point, I used to do connect apps, and then I would use these things called APIs, Twitter Application Programming Interfaces, where you connect Twitter to another thing that you're doing. And Twitter does not allow me to create new APIs anymore. I go into the developer.twitter.com and I go to try to create an API and it won't let me. It won't let me do it.
You've misbehaved.
So they don't like me, I guess.
No.
I feel sad. Not.
You should.
But anyway, but to Andrew's point, Andrew seems to be watching this on Periscope. Periscope is supposed to be gone and not working. And our understanding was that the Periscope things were going to move over to Twitter. And so the reason that we're asking and we're talking about studio.twitter.com is because the place that we would go get our quote unquote RTMP keys, which would allow us to stream from StreamYard to Twitter, we'd get those in the studio interface, which Tracy gets, but Peter doesn't get. So we have no idea. I think Twitter is I think that their development cycle is probably late, and they probably don't have things finished, and so they're just leaving things up until they get them done. Is my guess.
Could be, right?
Yeah.
What? Who knows? I've also behaved.
That was a good video on getting tased. Yeah. That was Andrew. So Andrew, meet David. David, meet Andrew. You guys are all here together in the chat room.
Yes. How dare you ask John Kerry about Skull and Bones?
Yep. Well, did you ever see George Bush when he was asked about it?
No.
I
Who
think
asked him?
Tim Russert, right before Tim Russert died.
Oh. Okay.
He said, you going to tell us anything about Skull and Bones? And he goes, no, I can't. And Tim Russert goes, why? And he goes, because it's a secret. You know?
Yeah.
And then Tim
Russert
Russert was
tasing Tim Russert.
Yeah, but well, something happened to Tim Russert because 3 weeks later he wasn't breathing.
Was that a sudden thing? I thought he had been sick, or was that the cover story afterwards? What you're maintaining?
I don't know. I don't know if he was sick. All I know is that he asked the question and then he wasn't alive anymore. So, you know, somebody in the chat room can go look it up and fact check me, and that's what I remember.
And they tried to make his kid a thing. Is he still around, Luke?
Luke Russert?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, David Hagelin says sudden. One of the rumors that I've heard. Is there a conflict going on here? Is it sudden?
Everybody's agreeing. It's all sudden.
Okay. So one of the other rumors that I heard about Tim Russert, though, was that, one of the drums that I beat all the time is that I think that Republicans that call themselves, who refer to themselves as red, are stupid.
Yes.
Because red is the color of Nazis and communists. And before the 2000 election, the Bush-Gore election, there was no consensus from the television networks on whether or not Republicans or Democrats were red or blue. And that apparently the rumor that I heard was that from a political consultant, a good, smart political consultant that everybody knows, is that Tim Russert, on the behest of Bill Clinton, reached out to the heads of the three major television networks and asked them if they could please just come up with a single color scheme and make the Democrats blue and make the Republicans red, which from my way of thinking, you and I talk about symbols all the time. We talk about the importance of colors. You talked about, coloring your tarot deck and all that other stuff. We pick the black and white format for this show, not because we're trying to be edgy, but because we understand that when people look at things in certain color frameworks, that it changes their perception of the world. And so the idea that in the 2000 election that all of the networks would decide that Republicans were red, and then the Republicans just went along with it.
Right, but you're thinking of 20th century context of those colors. if you think traditionally, those colors mean something totally different. Red is fire, blue is water. Red is male, blue is female.
Hang on a second, I'm going to pull up something.
So, I mean, I understand the argument from modern times that yes, the communists were red. But historically, across time, those colors have meant something different. And so if you're looking at Renaissance paintings and stuff like that, like I'm thinking of The Last Supper, for example, and how everybody's painted and Jesus is wearing the red robe.
Red or purple?
Red. I just rewatched the Da Vinci Code over the weekend, Peter. It's fresh in my brain.
Okay.
He's wearing red with a blue sash.
In Da Vinci's Last Supper.
Correct.
Okay. I'll show you this. So this is the Smithsonian. This is the Carter-Reagan election. So, this consensus. I'm sorry. I still don't think. I think that the Republicans just rolling over. You've got people like Eric Erickson running out and creating websites called Red State.
Right.
You've got when Trump, came out with the red MAGA hat, to reinforce the whole redness of everything. It bothered me. It's always bothered me.
Right.
He said it. So somebody's saying in Canada it's reverse. In Canada, what's reverse? Does that mean that
The party colors are reversed?
the conservatives are
blue.
the conservatives are blue and the liberals are red? Is that yeah. Anyway, Corky likes the black and white. Yeah, it makes us look like we're in the 1940s, right, Corky? Yeah.
Right. Well, it also lets you know that this is fiction to a certain
Right.
extent. I mean, we are trying to be as factual as possible, but we're not really in your room with you.
Right. And if you're watching this live, you can interact with us. But if you're not watching it live, we're really just pixels on a screen. There's nobody there. It's weird.
Yes. It is weird. But your brain doesn't know the difference. So we're trying to help your brain out by giving it subtle clues.
Yep. Okay, so Futter is saying lib is red. No, lib is not red. Okay.
This thing in Canada.
Oh, lib is red. I get it. Okay.
Yes. Remember, they were talking about Canada.
But
But I pulled out my symbols and signs book to see what they say about red and blue in here.
Yeah.
So
and?
red, symbolic meaning, vitality and life force, fire, the sun, the south, blood, good luck and prosperity, power and authority, masculine energy, war and anger, passion and an energy. And then for blue, I mean, they go further into detail. They've got truth and the intellect, which they think that they are.
True blue.
Yes. Wisdom and loyalty, chastity, which is laughable, peace, piety, contemplation, also a knee slapper, spirituality, and eternity. But they have all these pictures of female characters.
To me, I see red and I see the Nazis. I see the Russian
Well.
communists. I see the Chinese communists, and
I see the
and
magician.
and they want to make us Nazis.
Yeah,
Us, whatever us is. So
correct.
yeah. So this journalist friend of mine, when he was talking to me about how Joe Biden is the law and order president, he was saying, "Don't you want to support the U.S. government?" And I said, "I want to support America." I think that's a completely separate question than supporting the U.S. government. I don't believe the U.S. government acts in the current U.S. government. The people who occupy the buildings in Washington, D.C. and pretend that they observe the Constitution of the United States, that they don't represent me. They don't represent what I want, and they don't actually even represent what they say they represent, which is life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. All men are created equal.
Yeah.
Roses
we
are
don't have
red,
that.
and the Red Cross Swiss flag.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I was just talking about it within the framework of politics. So,
But that's an interesting point. Left is blue, right is red. That's universal.
Green, usually. Right? Actually, no.
On hearing aids?
On ships.
Well, she's saying hearing aids, Peter, specifically.
And I'm wondering
Ships,
if
and you
that's
have green and
that's
red.
because you're looking at it and you're putting it in your own. A ship, starboard is green, and port is red. So if you look at up in the sky, you see an airplane flying. If you see a red light, you're looking at the left side of the plane, which means that it's moving. It's moving this way. Although I think I'm mirrored because of this application, so I'm not sure. But anyway, you're looking at the left side of the plane if you see a red light. If you see a green light, you're looking at the right side of the plane. So colors do have meanings. But to Deborah's point, I wonder whether or not that's the same color scheme as port and starboard, except that you're looking at it and you're putting it in yourself. So that's why.
Yeah, and that could be a point too.
War of the Roses.
The red roses versus the white rose.
Right. Well, there's the Rosy Cross. You could probably go into that. I've been trying to watch that video that you talked to me about, the 3-hour long.
The occult symbolism in the JFK assassination.
Yes.
Yes.
Delusion. I've attempted, I think, 4 times at this point. They kind of go off into the weeds a lot and get lost, and I don't even think that I've gotten to the part where they're talking about JFK yet, and because I fall asleep.
Well, you can jump ahead. I mean, he's trying to give you as much context as possible, so if you didn't understand any of that stuff, you can keep up, because there's a lot to keep up with. Sure.
Yeah, it's been tough. It's been a tough road to hoe. But I've tried. Honestly, I've probably spent 4 hours watching the first hour.
Wow. Yeah, you should skip to the part where you can see the tree of life. So that's interesting.
Yep. I watched an interesting video yesterday on why Hitler really started World War II.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the premise was that it's interesting because it goes back, you were talking about Austrian economics earlier today, and I don't know if it was on the show, but you were talking to me about it. And the premise of this video is that that if you trade technology, if you're a technologically advanced society and you trade technology with agrarian societies, you wind up empowering the agrarian societies and turning them into technically advanced societies. And so if you really want to maintain your power over them, you don't wind up trading technology with them, you wind up conquering them in order to maintain your technological advantage over them. And that was the premise of this video. So,
well, we're not talking modern times, right?
This is the 1930s, 1920s. So Russia was largely agrarian.
Yes.
At that point, but they were rapidly attempting to become technological.
Yes, but you were saying that we give them technology.
Well, not we, any technologically sophisticated country that is trading. So I would say the United States and China, starting with Nixon. Okay, that when we started, when Nixon started the entire silicon, integrated circuit business was either in San Jose, California, or in Texas. You had Texas Instruments and Intel. And then over the course of all of this trade with China, where they're selling us cheap plastic stuff and food, we're sending them technology, and now they make all of the integrated circuits, and we don't have any in the United States. So that would be, that would support that hypothesis that the guy had. Anyway.
So what do you think about all the alien sightings, Peter? We haven't talked about that at all.
Show me one. There was the triangle thing the other day. I know that there's different schools of thought about the alien thing. So when we were talking to Michael Parker, we were talking about the guy who came on his show and claimed that the Tic Tac thing was what his explanation of the Tic Tac thing was nonsense. But the Tic Tac videos do exist. The Navy has released them, and they are out there in the world. There's a couple of different schools of thought. One is that there really are aliens, and that we've gotten all of our technology that we have from aliens, the pre-flood technology from the Anunnaki, and that they're always around us. They're interdimensionals, I suppose.
That's one way of thinking about them. Yeah.
And we like to think of them as extraterrestrial, but they might just be intraterrestrial.
I've heard people call them ultra-terrestrial.
Ultra terrestrial. That's right. And so on that side of the scale, they really exist, and they're really here, and we're trying to manage our relation. The powers that be are trying to manage their relationship with them. The other side of the scale is kind of like the Jay Dyer end of the scale, which is that in order to continue these universal mind control psyops, like allegedly the COVID-19 psyop is running, that what you would do is that you'd need an existential threat that would unite the entire planet together. Hence the day that Earth stood still kind of alien interaction, where the aliens show up and tell us that if we don't all get our act together, that they're going to wipe us out, or we're going to wind up being cattle, like the War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells'
So
War of the Worlds.
And the aliens in that scenario are like Greta Thunberg, except gray.
Yes.
Yes. How dare you continue to do these things?
Yes. So you told me that you were listening to an interesting flat Earth hypothesis this week too.
It's supposed to come out tomorrow.
Okay.
This documentary by Santo Bonacci is a guy that I've been following off and on for years on YouTube. He's very eclectic and eccentric, and he breaks down astrotheology, which is the idea that all of the world's religions are just different tales based on the stars.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of deal. But he's also way into physics and all this kind of stuff. So I watched a trailer last night on his YouTube channel where he's calling them globetards. And he's like, I will debate any globetard on the planet, and I will destroy you. And I was like, all right, okay, cool.
I want to see him debate Jay Dyer or something.
I'm sure he would take him on.
Yeah.
He's got a pretty big YouTube following, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm willing to entertain it. That's where I am.
Yeah, I am too. That's the difference between me now and me, 3 or 4 years ago, is that if you've got a hypothesis that challenges something that has been a lifelong belief of mine and it sounds pretty good, I'm willing to listen to it.
Yeah, and there are things that now I'm paying attention I can't explain. That doesn't make sense with what I've been told.
Right. So, like what?
Well, for example, I took a picture a couple weeks ago. I think I put it up. At least I've been taking time lapses out my window of sunrise. So there was one morning where the sun is coming up, say at my 12 o'clock, like right here. And the moon, which was a crescent moon at the time, is right over here. So I'm thinking, how is the sun hitting the earth here and that the shadows bouncing off at this strange angle that way? I can share the picture with you. I don't have it on my camera.
Yeah, I understand.
But I mean, they're almost next to each other in the sky. The moon was like at about 2 o'clock and the sun was at my noon. So the sun was going to be here shortly. And how's the shadow?
Well, the moon is, a lot closer to the earth than the sun.
Yes, but the shadow would have to be at 90. How is the earth throwing a 90-degree shadow?
Well, you're on a sphere, so everything is relative to the way that...
Am I? I don't know. It just didn't make sense. I've shown it to some engineers that I know, Peter, and they're like, that is weird. How is that happening? I don't understand.
Well, here's the tell for me. I mean, and I'm not saying that the earth is flat, but to me, the idea that the entire thing is designed, how is it that with all of the different sizes of planets and objects in the universe, that the Earth, relative to the Earth, the moon and the sun are exactly the same size relative to the Earth. They're almost identically the number of degrees of arc exactly the same.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. Yeah, I was when you and I were talking about the flat Earth thing. I've been thinking about this a lot because I built video games, and if you're running around in Grand Theft Auto or Quake or one of the shooters, Medal of Honor or whatever the new ones are that the kids are playing with the.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I can't remember what they're called. I remember what it looks like, but. You're basically running around on a plane that has that goes off into infinity, and eventually infinity is so small that you don't have a differentiation between the plane and whatever is behind it. And whatever is behind it in video games is called a skybox. So the skybox contains the clouds that are above you and everything that is beyond the terrain on the horizon in all directions. And I was thinking about that the other day because I was looking up at the stars and I was thinking the difference between what we see as human beings and what you see in a video game is exactly nothing. There is no difference.
Right.
It might as well be pixels, right? And you've got all of these people out there in the world. I toy around with the idea of buying a telescope, but buying a telescope, it's like buying a ham radio, or it's like buying anything else. It's like if you really, or a camera, if you want to get really good at it, you're going to go dump a bunch of money in it, and you're never really going to get a better picture than,
No, and you're in LA, so you'd have so much light pollution.
Yeah. There is one astronomer, there is one astrophotographer that I found, though, that lives in Manhattan, in New York, and he only shoots pictures of the sun.
Okay.
Because in the place that he lives, it's the only place that he can shoot pictures of a astral body without having a lot of problems with the fact that he's in a major city. And his photograph, I can't remember the guy's name, but his photographs are pretty amazing.
We'll dig it up and.
Yeah, Fortnite. That was right, Dave. Fortnite.
Yeah, and I was thinking Call of Duty too, but oh, there's a good video. It says we live in a crater. I wish I could send it to you. Interesting. I'll go look for it.
Yeah, you could send it to us somehow. If you go to our link trees, there's ways to communicate with us.
And we've got a contact page on therealityos.com. You can join our locals community and let us know. But let's see if anybody has any questions, and if not, I want to leave you with a thought about space being fake, because these are the things that I run up against, and I'm like, I can't explain this. And I think this was in Santo Bonacci's trailer, which I will link in the description of this so you guys can see it. His big thing is see, there we go, angry catfish. Interesting. Discusses how the moon is flipping nightly. Oh, I would like him. And there's another guy named Crow with 2 R's, so it's CRROW and then 777. And he's been filming the moon for years. So I was watching his videos last night, and there seems to be this wave pattern disruption that goes over the surface of the moon. And he's filmed it several times, and there's 2 waves, and you can see it. He's filming with a wide lens, so you can see the entire surface of the moon. And you see this ripple, and it looks like a waterbed. Like, imagine that the moon is just a waterbed and somebody just pushed on it. So there's a ripple that goes across the whole face of the moon. And then there's usually 2. And he's got them from other people in other parts of the world as well. So that was pretty wild. But in Santo Bonacci's trailer, he has a shot where it's just pointed straight at the North Star. So you see everything rotating around it. And I don't know, I think he brought this up, but if not, somebody else did. So I don't want to give him credit if it's not due. But we're told, Big Bang, everything is spreading apart, right? And it's getting, I heard somebody a couple of weeks ago say, and it's speeding up. It's not even slowing down. So if that's true, then why aren't our constellations getting further and further apart from each other and further away from us?
They are, I think.
But we've had the same constellations on record for tens of thousands of years now from other cultures.
Well, because they're billions of years old, and the perception of...
It's supposed to be moving so friggin' fast, Peter. You're telling me that these things that align to those...
Tracy, are you telling me that you're not moving at 1,040 miles an hour right this second?
I don't know, Peter. I don't feel like it. I feel like
I know why am I not stuck up against the wall back there? Like,
right. Well, I understand that. I mean, you can be on a bus and you can jump, and the bus doesn't move out from under you. You're moving at the same speed of it as it.
oh, now you're going all Einstein on me.
Oh, I mean, honestly, you can try that. It happens.
That was
That's something that it could easily
his
become.
special relativity example, I think.
That you're moving at the same speed.
Yeah, he talks about people jumping on a train, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I first started seeing this flat Earth stuff, that was one of the things that they talked about, was that idea. And it's like, no, dude, you're moving with that thing. Just because you jump, you already had that momentum. You're not going to lose it that quickly. But who knows? It's all fake, Peter. It's clown world.
It's, well, it's just.
We need clown flat.
Is this
Earth
how we
world,
should?
though.
Is this how we should leave the show?
Yes. We do need to get that. They don't have a flat Earth emoji, do they?
No, but
We should raise hell about this.
exactly.
An underrepresented community.
Yeah, I just wonder, are there going to be mask emojis now? I guess there's always
there
been there's always been a yellow face with a mask.
Yes.
Right?
But whatever they're called, where you can make your own face that Apple has, the memojis or whatever the hell they call them.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You can add a mask to yourself if you want to. I know. I don't know what year we get through this, if it's 2022 where I don't have to see people in their avatars with masks on or what. But
Yeah, don't be a mask hole. That's all I have to say.
and if you must, get the one that Peter has,
Yeah,
the
where
sheer
is it?
mask.
I don't know where I put it. It might be on a hook.
Don't worry about it. It's the most
Anyway.
ridiculous thing I've ever seen, and I love it.
It is. I tweeted it out. I tweeted out a link last week in case anybody wants a sheer mask.
And I love it. It was on Etsy, I think, and the reviews are hilarious. It's other people that wanted to be trolls.
Oh, and 3/4 of the copy, the ad copy on the page is how it's not a medically approved device and it doesn't provide any kind of protection and blah 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 blah. And they've sold 30. I want to say they sold 39,000 of them
Awesome.
at $9. So.
God, the margins are like 500% on that.
Well, I mean, how genius. I look at that and I marvel at the genius of somebody coming up with that idea and then making almost $500,000 selling them. It's great.
Should figure out who it is.
Somebody smart.
Yes,
Maybe it's your neighbor.
it could be.
It could be. All righty.
All right, Peter.
Any more questions? I see.
I don't know, but I will throw in the links to that JFK esoteric occult, whatever the heck that was called, the ritual.
Yeah, throw that video up, and then maybe somebody else can jump in, and maybe I'll just skip the first hour and see if I can make heads or
You can
tails
just
of it.
fast forward to the part where you see the Kabbalistic tree of life on the screen and watch them break down how Dealey Plaza was laid out, just like the Kabbalistic tree of life,
Okay, I will.
with the tarot overlay. It's pretty crazy.
So wait, what's infidel apostate?
Yes,
Are you
it
la-
is.
Are you late?
Yes, he is.
All right. Well, we'll stay here for one more minute if you got a question, but otherwise, you're just going to have to watch the replay.
Do I need to send you a calendar invite? I had to send one to Peter.
Did you?
I sent you a calendar invite. I believe you accepted it.
I probably did, but I was still trying to figure out what time the show started this morning because I was foggy. I don't know what to tell you. All right. I will see you next week, Tracy.
All right.
I'll see everybody and you, all of you out there. I'm not going to treat you like infants. You know how to like and subscribe things, so I'm not going to tell you to do that. And we'll see you later.